Welcome back. So, in the last few lectures, we've been looking at positional and principal negotiation. We're now going to be looking at distributive and integrative negotiation styles, which are related concepts that represent slightly different approaches to resolving conflicts and also reaching agreements. In this lecture, we're going to focus specifically on distributive negotiation. Distributive negotiation, which is often also referred to as competitive or win-lose negotiation, revolves around the allocation of limited resources. So picture the scenario where the parties involved often have conflicting interests, with one party's gain directly corresponding to the other party's loss. Imagine a pie that needs to be divided into pieces. The more one party gets, the less is left for the other. Now, distributive negotiation tends to be short-term focused rather than long-term, as the goal is to maximize the individual gains without giving much concern for the relationship between the parties themselves. Confidentiality and tactful extraction of information are crucial aspects of distributive negotiations, especially in sensitive or high-stake situations. Now, again, also in distributive negotiations where parties are often focused on maximizing their individual gains, maintaining confidentiality plays a significant role in ensuring a fair and successful outcome. Here we can see how distributive negotiation principles apply to confidentiality. Firstly, limited sharing of information. So in distributive negotiations, parties tend to share limited information to avoid giving away their positions or interests. This can extend to protecting sensitive area or information that, if it becomes disclosed, could weaken the party's bargaining position, and the confidentiality agreements themselves may be established to ensure that any shared information is used only within the context of the negotiation and is not exploited by the other party. Secondly, we have controlled communication. Now, distributive negotiations may involve controlled communication to prevent the other party from gaining insight into their priorities or their bottom line. I say may, it's not always essential, but often is the case that this does play a part in it. There will be an element of control. This controlled communication helps to preserve the confidentiality of the sensitive information and also maintains a tactical advantage during the negotiation process. Both sides will be doing it also, and sometimes it will clearly be visible, but that's typically okay, and it's often expected in this type of negotiation. The third is selective disclosure. So parties may choose to strategically disclose certain information while keeping other details confidential. By doing this, it allows them to guide the negotiation toward their desired outcome without revealing their full hand. Think about it like a game of cards, like a game of poker. You don't want the opposition or your counterpart to know exactly what's in your hand, but as you place each card down, they get a little bit more insight into your full position. So selective disclosure can help to manage the negotiation process, but also safeguarding sensitive aspects of the deal. Now, this is all well and good in theory, but in practice, you will need to gain some information from your counterpart, and they will need to do the same to avoid a stalemate situation occurring. There will also be cases where it will be unreasonable if you don't share information. In addition to being too noticeably shut down and inflexible, it could, in effect, damage the whole communication and the negotiation in its entirety. So be careful. But tactfully extracting the information that you need is essential, and it'll help both parties to gain a better understanding of each other's needs and priorities. Now, in distributive negotiation, where there is a competitive dynamic, extracting the information requires an element of finesse to avoid revealing too much while gathering insights that can be used strategically. Now, here are four of the key ways that you can tactfully extract information from your counterpart in a distributive negotiation situation. The first one, asking open-ended questions. So instead of asking direct yes or no questions, open-ended questions can encourage the party to share more information about their interests and priorities. Now, you don't always have to be asking open-ended questions. For example, occasionally, when you want to clarify, for example, you will have to ask close-ended questions. You know, are we in agreement up to this point? Yes or no? So closed-ended questions will play a part in it, but also open-ended questions need to be in there too to gather as much information as possible. Active listening is the second one. So active listening to what the other party says and paying attention to subtle cues that can help you uncover information that may not be explicitly stated. A great way of doing this is to build rapport before the negotiation itself, and you can assess their body language and you can calibrate it. You know, when they're happy or excited, do they sit a certain way? Do they do a certain thing with their hands or their facial expressions? Wherever you can, in whichever situation you can, try and gather as much information from the person and their body language, their tone, their posture, so that when you're in the negotiation as well, it might give you some clues. But things to watch out for: tone of voice, hesitations, and other non-verbal clues that can give you or reveal more information about the other party's mindset and priorities. The third is testing hypotheses. So in a distributive negotiation scenario, you may develop hypotheses about the other party's interests. Again, in these situations, and when you do want to double check, you need to tactfully probe these hypotheses through perhaps hypothetical scenarios or statements that will help you to gauge the accuracy of your assumptions and also gain insight into their priorities. The fourth one here is reciprocity. At some points throughout the negotiation, you're going to need to offer small pieces of information about your own interests that can encourage the other party to reciprocate and share information as well. This balanced exchange can help to create an environment of trust and openness. You know, you give a little bit and you'll get a little bit from them in return. So obviously don't be all take. You'll need to give a little as well. If you can, wait for them to be the giver and then you share yours. But if it comes to the point where you do need to step up, just share little pieces as you can, see what you get in return, and maybe open up more if it will be beneficial to you without giving away too much. The key is to remember that the goal is to strike a balance between gaining valuable information and preserving the confidentiality of sensitive details. By using strategic communication, active listening, and a thorough understanding of the distributive negotiation dynamics, you can extract relevant information while safeguarding your position and interests at the same time. Now, it will take time, it will take practice, and this is why I urge you to practice everything that you're learning in this course. But for now, see you in the next lecture where we will be examining the integrative negotiation concept.